marijuana has become more accepted, not only culturally, but legally in our country. And I think on the whole, this is a good thing. First of all, I don't think anyone should be imprisoned for a drug use problem or using drugs in general. I think that is your personal decision. You have the right to make that decision of what you want to put in your body. You obviously have to deal with the consequences of that, but certainly people should not be punished for substance use. So I think that's a good thing. But I think we really have to be careful about how far we've gone to the other end, particularly with marijuana. It seems in their culture now, people seem to believe that marijuana is completely safe. It's completely healthy. There are no risks. There are no problems with it, and that you should, or at least you could be using it to manage your anxiety and your depression. And this is really, really dangerous in my opinion. Marijuana has a lot of benefits, and in using it in short doses, and using it maybe even alongside a provider, a doctor who knows what they're doing, yes, marijuana can help in short doses with some anxiety and some depression. However, marijuana, the more that they've been able to study it, the more they have found there is a very, very high link between marijuana use and psychosis in particular. Psychosis is when someone becomes out of touch with reality. So they can become paranoid, they can start hearing voices, seeing things that aren't there. They're not living in the real world, essentially. And the reality with marijuana is it can lead to acute psychosis, and in some cases, it can onset or trigger schizophrenia, right? If you have a history or a family history of schizophrenia, and you smoke marijuana, particularly on a daily basis, you are really increasing your risks of having a psychotic episode. And even if you don't have a history of that, if you use marijuana heavily enough, you can have a psychotic episode. And psychotic episodes can be very, very scary. And they can also, if it gets triggered, then it can return in other times in your life under stress or under using marijuana again. So we really have to be realistic about what marijuana is and what it can and cannot do. And we've gone so far that we're starting to believe that marijuana has no risks and no dangers at all. And that is just not true. Even if you're not concerned about psychosis, I would argue that marijuana is not really good for your anxiety either. Yes, it can help in short doses. It might even feel like it's relieving your anxiety, sure. But the reality is that alcohol can do that too, right? If you have anxiety and you drink alcohol, in the moment, it will relieve your anxiety. There's no doubt about it. But once you get off the alcohol, your anxiety is actually going to increase, right? The next day, you're going to feel worse, and then you're going to feel like you need to drink again. And this is the same case with people who use marijuana to cover their anxiety. They don't actually address the anxiety. Now they're just using marijuana to mask the anxiety. But the problem here is that once you stop using, that anxiety is going to come back, and it's going to come back even worse. And now you're going to need the marijuana again to reduce the anxiety. And because you're using it more, you're going to gain a higher tolerance, which means you're going to need to use more marijuana. And this is going to start a pattern where you're going to use more and more. And again, increase your risk of a psychotic episode. And even for things like depression, yes, for some people, it can help elevate their mood, but for some people, it lowers their mood and it lowers their ambition and their motivation. So it really depends on the person, obviously depends on the strain, depends on all these sorts of things. But really, if you are using these things, I'm not telling you not to use them. I'm telling you, obviously, first you got to talk to your doctor and see what they think about it, and try to come up with a reasonable use amount. So you're not using it every single day. And so it's not interfering with any other medication that you're using or any other therapy that you're doing. But I think we have to be really careful that just because marijuana is legal and just because it comes out of the ground doesn't mean it doesn't have any dangers or any risks. It does, and we have to be honest with ourselves and realistic with ourselves. And I'm going to add some research to the bottom of this video so you can do some digging yourself and to read into what they have found and the correlations that they found between marijuana and psychosis and anxiety and things like that. So this is a short video, just a quick PSA, but I think it's important that people realize that marijuana is not a cure-all for mental health disorders, and in many cases, it can cause or at least exacerbate mental health disorders. So we have to be very, very honest about that. That doesn't mean you have to stop smoking. It doesn't mean you can't do that if you want to once in a while. But you just have to be honest and you have to be realistic and realize that it is not a panacea. It doesn't cure everything, and it does have very severe side effects.